What happened to Marty? Did she go home?
You ready, boss man? Calm me down. Let's call 30 seconds. 15. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're on.
Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2018 show. I'm your host, Don Kay. We are live from McGillivray Speedway at 30th and High School in the beautiful town of Speedway, Indiana. Tonight's show is presented by Honda, Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Verizon IndyCar Series, and the SVRA. For those of you who may not have heard, this past couple, 3-4 days ago, Dan Gurney passed away at the age of 86. He was one of the all-time greats, and I can remember back in, I forget when, in the early 70s sometime, of the 33 starting cars for the 500, I think 31 of them were Gurney Eagles. He was a heck of a guy. And I also got to mention that on Friday, one of the all-time greats is having a birthday, Glenn. Glenn, happy birthday on Friday. Glenn Timmis's birthday. I want to mention that there's some people missing that are normally here every week. Steve and Martha are down in Tucson, or they're down in Florida listening, and Charlie, Chuck, and Ann are down in Tucson, Arizona watching. And if you hadn't heard, today is A.J. Foyt's birthday. Next week, my first scheduled guest is a gentleman that should be very interesting to hear from. He's the CEO of Hullman & Company, which, among others, has the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the IndyCar Series. Mr. Mark Miles is scheduled to be my guest. And don't forget, the daily specials are on every day now. They're back, and it's on your table. And if you need a copy to take with you, don't hesitate. Take it with you. And also, the doctor's appointment that everybody really looks forward to is a dentist. So I'm going to tell you the place to go is the Indy Dental Group. Dr. Jack Miller and Dr. Liz Lewis are owners. If you need a good dentist, and I'm telling you they are phenomenal over there, give them a call, make an appointment, 317-846-6125. And there's an upcoming More Horsepower Racing collectible show this weekend at the Waterfront Hotel, formerly the Clarion. It's at 2930 Waterfront Parkway Drive, which is just east of, or west of Speedway, and on the north side of Crawfordsville. It's on Friday and Saturday, the 19th and 20th, and it's $5 admission, and admission is good for both days. And we'll talk more about it when we get going here with the young lady that's part of it. My first guest is a gentleman that has always accepted my invitation. I'm not sure he's always happy about it, but he's always done it. He is the managing director for Ganassi Racing. He oversees a myriad of things, and I'm surprised he had the time to come here because he's leaving tomorrow morning. But I'm pleased to have him here. Please welcome Mr. Mike Hull. What got you into motorsports?
Elizabeth Miller has been my dentist since she graduated from dental school here in Indy.
Yes, she did.
What got me into motorsports? I grew up in Southern California, and growing up there at the time that I grew up, generationally, it was pretty hard not to fall into motorsports. There was so much going on there. Any form of motorsports was at your disposal. Anything in the dirt, anything on asphalt, anything that turned, anything that went straight. And a lot of the major race teams were based there. So I was one of those kids that pestered the heck out of people that were in racing and managed to climb over the fence.
That's what I did, too. I got here, and I went and bought a Firestone jacket, and somebody dropped a mechanic's rag, and I grabbed it quick, and I'd walk through the gate with wiping my hands, and nobody ever stopped me. I was in hog heaven. You've been with Chip for quite a number of years. You've been involved in the Scott Dixon's win, his 4 championships, and been involved in overseeing the Ganassi IndyCar program, and you've got 100 wins. That's got to keep you pretty busy. Plus, you also are involved in the sports car program.
Yeah, our Kelby, our PR person, sent me a note today because the team as a whole, Chip Ganassi Racing as a whole, has won 199 races. But the building here in Indy has won 158 of those races. So it means a lot to us with what we do between sports car racing and IndyCar racing. And somebody told me the other day that two drivers that have driven for us in Indianapolis, Scott Pruitt and Scott Dixon, between the two of them have won 82 races. So it's been a lot of fun, and it does keep me busy, keeps all of us busy, and we just stay after it.
I understand you corralled the CEO of LST Marketing to become the vice president of marketing, John Lopes. Has he behaved himself in the office? Or aren't you see him?
Well, I've been around people that work a lot, and all of us do. But he turns the lights on and turns the lights off. He's a hardworking person. He's very, very knowledgeable about what it takes commercially with partners to make things happen. And he's already made a difference for us, and he'll make a larger difference as time goes on.
Today, I sent you a text about whether or not you were good to go for tonight, and you responded to me. And at the time you did that, I was watching the streaming of from the Detroit Auto Show. And Mark Miles introduced the car, then Joseph went through with the various parts and pieces. And that was followed, actually while that was still on, it was because it was delayed, with a press conference. And I'm not sure exactly what the talent is that he has, but in my mind, and I think in most people's mind, Jay Fry has made a huge difference in the racing ability, the safety of the cars. He talks to people. He's not afraid to listen. I think he's doing, and his staff. Now, he always will say, well, there's so-and-so and so. Say, well, the quarterback always gets the credit when they win a game. Well, the quarterback threw 10 touchdowns. Well, yeah, but he had 11 guys or 10 guys blocking for him. That's how he could do that. I think IndyCar, to me, is on the right track.
Quarterbacks define culture. And I think that's what Jay Fry has done in the job that he's now in. He is a fresh set of eyes, and that really does sometimes help if you combine that fresh set of eyes with the ability to create practical decision by listening to your constituency, and that's what Jay does extremely well. He should get credit for a lot of the things that are going on there, but one of the things that he did right away that I was impressed with was the fact that he pushed really hard for multi-year contracts with promoters and date equity. The IndyCar didn't have that. IndyCar had this schedule that was one-year contracts. How can a promoter promote an event just for 1 year, not knowing if they're going to have the same date again, whether they're going to be back? How can the TV do a good job of that either? So I think Jay pushed that agenda really, really hard at the very beginning, and made things happen that hadn't happened in the past. And then in terms of the car, I think he married up the engine manufacturers quite well with the idea that they were going to go forward with something that was raceable and something that could define difference for IndyCar racing, and that's what we now have. Since I've been involved on this side of IndyCar racing, both prior to the merger and with the merger, we've had good race cars, but I don't think we've had race cars that are quite like the one we're going to race now. Yes, it's the same monocoque, it's a lot of the same suspension, but I think it's a car now that does things the right way. And it'll race really well, and I think it'll really make a difference for IndyCar racing.
Now, it would seem to me your job has gotten easier. You went from 4 cars now down to 2.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, you can go home, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You don't have to stay all day with 4 cars to oversee. Has that made any kind of difference, or are you still there until 7, 8 o'clock at night?
It hasn't made a difference for any of us in the building. In this building in Indianapolis, we run the IndyCar program, which is 2 entries, Scott Dixon, Ed Jones, and that's, I think, 18 races, if I got it right. Then we also run a factory program for Ford in the IMSA series with the Ford GT cars. That's 12 races in North America and 1 race overseas, which is Le Mans. and it has 3 significant endurance races. The one coming up in 2 weekends, which is the 24 Hours of Daytona, followed in March by 12 Hours of Sebring, and then in June by Le Mans. So that's a big effort just to be ready to race those kinds of races in addition to the sprint races we do there. So for me last year, there were 2 conflicts on the schedule. I didn't get to 2 sports car races, so I think I did 28 races last year from Indy, plus the tests. So we have plenty to do.
Has Chip mentioned anything about going into Formula E?
Formula E, I think, has a future, or maybe electric racing has a future. That's probably a better way to look at it. Maybe the FIA will protect Formula E when other forms of racing adopt electric vehicles. Because I think more likely, the money will most likely down the road come from car manufacturing companies that want to have cars that have fenders that race with electric power. And that's more toward the showroom. The technology involved in a Formula E car, if you ever get an opportunity to look at one up close, is pretty cool. Now with the rules for the season that they're in now, the whole rear end of the car is represented by the OEM. They can do anything they want to do in the back, basically, which is different than the rules that preceded. It's a very, very technically advanced race car. I know a lot of people are turned off by the fact it sounds kind of like an RC car, but what's going on, what's been announced by the manufacturers about the future of electric vehicles versus hybrids means that it's probably coming at us in some way or other.
Now, can you imagine going to the Indianapolis 500 and they got 33 electric cars and people are telling the PA system, turn it down, it's too loud?
Yeah, I don't know. For people like me, I'd have a tough time with that.
Yeah, so would I. I like the horsepower. I like, you got one driver, you got to have 2 cars.
Yeah.
Because they don't last that long.
Yeah.
Are you happy with the design of the car, with what they've come up with, what they now have it has been run and is going to be starting to get run even more? Do you like the design and the safety features and so forth of the car?
I think, first of all, on the safety aspect of the car, they've done some good things to help reinforce the car a bit down the flanks of the car, more so than it's been in the past. That's really important in terms of safety. The car is much more, it's more of a driver's race car now than it ever has been, and the reason is very simple. If whatever number, everybody throws around this word downforce, that just means the amount of aero that the car sucks the car to the ground. Let's just call it that. We have 1/3 less downforce now than what we had last year. 1/3 less. That's significant, and that's in all configurations that we have to race. So long track, short track, road track, street track, 1/3 less downforce. So if you think about your hovercraft, trying to hover with less downforce, 1/3 less downforce, that's what it means. I think then what happens is it puts the car more in the driver's hands, and the second thing in relationship to that, no matter what Firestone does with the tires, lots of people on the racetrack that don't get it right are going to slide around a lot. And when they slide around a lot, the tires are going to give way sooner, which means there's going to be a lot more passing advantage on the racetrack. And so I think that's going to be fun to watch.
Now, you mentioned that one of the leading winners for Ganassi is the current driver and former champion, the 500 champion, Scott Dixon. Has he been in the car yet?
Well, we were lucky, I guess. We didn't set it up this way, and we didn't think we were going to get the deal. We thought Andretti was. But Andretti was late to sign with Honda, and they were playing that ping pong match with Honda and Chevrolet, trying to get the best deal there. And Honda had to make a decision about who they were going to choose to test their version of the car in the wintertime, and they chose Sam Schmidt's team and our team. So we thought we were going to be working on building pit equipment all winter. Instead, we got to do 6 tests for Honda with the body kit. So we got a little bit of a head start. But actually what's been good about both us and Schmidt is that all the other Honda teams were at every test. They were part of a lot of the debrief. They got a lot of the information. I think the evidence of that was what we saw. We tested at Sebring a week ago tomorrow, Wednesday, and we shared the track with Coyne and Andretti. And Andretti guys in particular, man, they were on the pace right away. So I think that's a testament to the partnership that Honda has with all its teams.
Will it affect Scott? I mean, will he have a problem to adjust, or can these drivers pick up the change in the car, the difference in the handling, and so forth?
Well, I think Scott, if you study his career as an IndyCar driver, now for 15, 16 years as an IndyCar driver, the formula has changed for him at least 7, maybe 8 times. And each time he's adapted himself to the new formula. And if you look at the fact that he continues to win by modifying his drive style every time the formula changes, I think that'll probably happen again in 2018. He'll adapt himself to how this car operates. Yeah, I think he'll be okay.
I know the drivers that I've talked to over the last few years have said, we want more control in the car. Well, now they got it. Now they got to control the car because, as you said, in fact, as Joseph said today, when he tested it, the back end keeps wanting to skip out on you. So the driver's going to have to really take hold of the car, and they will be driving it.
Yeah, we watched those Penske guys at Sebring right before Christmas doing that. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
You think by the time everybody gets down to St. Pete, that they'll have pretty much dialed in use of the car? So everybody will be scrambling, I'm sure.
I don't think it'll be any different than it is any other year. Some people will have it together, and some people will have it apart. I think you just have to, whenever something changes, you have to accept change immediately. The quicker you accept change, the faster you're going to be at responding to it in terms of finding speed again. And believe me, we're doing things today with the car that we wouldn't have done last year, and that's just because of the nature of the race car.
Is there such a thing as building a car that's too safe? I mean, it's amazing to me the number of changes they've made over the years, and IndyCar seems to respond quickly, but without redesigning the car. They have people that understand what's happened. They examine what's happened, because obviously driver safety is tantamount, but it's tantamount for everybody.
Well, you can replace cars, but you can't replace drivers. So I think it's important that what happens in racing is that every time we have an accident, it's a test case. And the sanctioning body's responsibility is to do something about it every time it happens. And as we've seen, it's not bulletproof, as safe as we might think it is. So, no, I don't think you can make the car too safe.
The thing is, again, with drivers I've spoken to, I said, do you concern yourself with a wreck? No. We don't want one, but if it happens, we feel very safe behind the wheel of the car, and I think that says a lot, because now you're able to drive maybe a little different than you would. You're not afraid of it.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. You might ask Scott Dixon that question when he was at the arc of that flight at the Speedway last year, what he was thinking about. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, but the result is he walked away, limped away, but he walked away.
Yeah, we were pretty lucky there, because if that car would have inverted another 20 degrees, we'd probably be having a different conversation.
Oh, no question. Is there too many races in a season, or would you like to see IndyCar running 20?
I think it's the right number of races for the way it falls on the calendar. The only way to have more races is to extend the calendar. And if they shouldn't extend the calendar to spread the races out. They should extend the calendar to add more races. But at the same time, then you have to be able to match up the marketing dollars for the buy, for the outreach, how many people you reach per dollar. So in that regard, I think it's probably about the right number of races at the moment also.
Are you interested in, they're talking about going to Brazil, they're talking about going to Mexico, they're talking about going back to Australia. Do you want to pack up an airplane and go flying off?
Well, we would drive to Mexico. I don't know if you've ever driven there, but that's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you should race races that are in the television time zone. That's really, really important. I don't really think we should be flying around the world at the moment in IndyCar racing. I think we should fortify our series and make the races we have stronger. I think racing in Mexico City would be a great place to race because they just did a $250 million renovation on that racetrack. It's a proper Formula One racetrack. It's a real racetrack. So is COTA. So is Montreal. We don't race at any one of those three places. We should race at all three of those because of the racetrack and how it would showcase IndyCars. It would showcase IndyCar racing the right way.
I think the television is crucial, in my opinion, that they need to up that. And I got to say, and I've said this 1,000 times, that if a driver wins the IndyCar championship, I think they say Formula One greatest drivers in the world. Oh, really? They're all on street and road courses. Whoopee! Here you got to run a 3/4 mile track in Iowa, and you run a 2.5 mile one here, and a 2.5 mile one in Pocono. You've got a little bit of everything, and if you win the championship, I think IndyCar's got the best drivers in the world.
I agree with that. I do agree with that.
What's next for the series that you'd like to see happen, if anything?
Find a better television package. To me, that's the number one priority. I don't know where television is going with streaming, with things like Hulu or Amazon Television or things like that. But we need to find viewership. We don't have enough viewership, and everybody screams and yells about the fact that it needs to be on network. 5 years from today, anybody sitting in this room or anybody watching this broadcast may not be watching network television. We need to be in 5 years we need to be in front of people the right way, and I think IndyCar is at the crossroads in making a decision for the future that's going to affect all of us.
I had Buddy McAtee in here a year or two before he passed away, and he says, "Trust me, in 5 years, network television will not be where you'll be doing it. It will be elsewhere." And he's right. It hasn't jumped totally yet, but it is jumping. And I know Robbie Green is working. In fact, Mark said something about they're working on it, a program right now, because at the end of 18 they got to move on to something.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Because one thing they announced, there'll be more in-car cameras. Well, something, and I want to get Terry Lingner in here, something that irritates me, they'll shoot out the front of the guy leading the race, and there's nobody there. What are we looking at? The nose of his car? But I think the camera work with the in-car really shows the passing, how close they get, and that kind of thing. I think that's kind of interesting. And I see a lot of people in the grandstands when I wander around with a handheld, and they're watching the same damn thing.
Yeah.
And I don't have anything like that, and I don't want one. I got a flip phone, and that's it for me. So if I can't see it by standing there or watching it on television, I don't want it in my hand.
So you have the only flip phone left in America?
No, there's another one right over here.
There we got. Okay.
And there's three of us that have them right here.
Okay.
So, I think, how come you guys have never gotten into the Mazda Road to Indy program?
We did actually run an Indy Lights team very briefly. So we were there once. But when we chose to go sports car racing, it kind of took up the volume of time that we had, and we haven't ventured back there since.
Do you guys pay attention to what goes on? I know every once in a while when I watch the Lights or the Pro Mazda, there's team owners and people are out keeping an eye.
Well, we do, and every year for the last 4 years now, IndyCar has provided the opportunity to non-Indy Lights teams to run an Indy Lights driver on a test day. And we've done that every year where Scott Dixon, in this case, has shared a car with a driver. And what we've done is we have chosen drivers that don't have a fallback position financially. ones that don't bring any money. And we've tested them because, in our opinion, we don't really. It's tough to have a driver who hires you. You're a lot better to try to hire the driver. So we've tested Felix Rosenquist a couple of times. We tested Sean Rahal. And I can tell you, as a young American, Sean Rahal should be driving an Indy car. He is the real deal, and he's driving sports cars because he has to do that to earn a living. Last year he raced in Europe, and he raced in North America. So I think last year he did 35 races. He's a pretty good guy. So we'll do that again this year with that split thing where you can run a guy, and I'm not sure who it's going to be at this point, but that's what we'll do.
But it seems, I think last year when the 500 started, there was like 20 or more drivers had come through that program that were now in IndyCar. So obviously the program's working. Whatever Dan Anderson is doing, it's working.
Yeah, it sure is.
So,
and you know what? The cars may now be more suited as a flat bottom car. They may actually be more suited to driving an Indy car than the transition that a driver has had to make to a downforce car from a flat bottom car in a lights car to a full downforce car in an Indy car.
Yeah, well, I think that was his intention, and the drivers that I've talked to said that's when they've gone from Indy Lights to an Indy car, it's not something holy Toledo. They're ready for it.
Yeah.
And they've done a nice job. So you're leaving tomorrow. Where are you going testing?
I'm not going testing tomorrow, but
you're just leaving. Oh, okay.
No, I'm just leaving.
Okay.
No, I'm actually going to Scottsdale tomorrow night. I'm going out there for Barrett Jackson because there's a car out there. A friend of mine's auctioning a car off.
I just saw it up here somewhere.
Yeah, well, it's called a Bullet Mustang, and Chad McQueen's that charity's doing a car out there, so I'm going out there to see that.
I don't know if you know this, but you won't have to take a snow shovel with you.
Well, I haven't really looked at the weather. I better look at that when I get ready to pack here tonight. Yeah.
Well, listen, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy, and I'll get out, and I've never asked if you would be available that you said no. When you're available,
well, sometimes we've had to work on the calendar a little bit.
Oh, yeah, but that's fine. That's fine. I appreciate you taking the time. I think it's going to be an exciting year this year, and I have a feeling that that Mr. Dixon can be up at the top where he usually is anyway, but this time he might be on the top step.
Well, you know, he's got one race to tie Michael, 2 races to pass him, and then, 8 races to pass the entire Andretti family. So I guess we'll work on that next.
I don't know. What is it about him? He is just, I mean, the guy doesn't get flustered. They call him the Iceman, but he doesn't get all upset.
Yeah. You know, I would say this. A couple of years ago, I went downtown to a restaurant during, I think it might have been during May, and I was sitting there. I was early, and the people that I was meant to be with weren't there yet, so Mario was at the bar, so I sat down with Mario because he was the same. He was waiting for somebody to come, the group that he was with. And he made a comment to me about Dixon. He said, "Could I say something to you about Dixon?" I said, "Sure." And he said, "I'm glad I never had to race against him." Because he said, "But I shouldn't say it that way. I should have probably been happy to race against him because I probably would have learned a lot." So I thought that was a great compliment. And I think Scott Dixon has proven that by being able to change his drive style, in this day and age, drivers don't get to drive different race cars. So the only way they can prove themselves is continue to be good as the formula changes. And I think he's done that better than most of the people in his peer group. And he'll continue to do that.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch. It's always fun to watch these guys as they evolve, as they move up. I mean, Joseph Newgarden a couple years ago had a lot of talk about him, but he showed the talk was right. He won the championship. And for that to have happened with Roger Penske in 1 year is amazing, because usually it takes the good drivers a couple years, as it did with Simon, to get to the package. But he figured it out and he got it. Yeah. So now you guys got to. That should be a good battle.
You can't, this year. Don. You cannot. You can't teach somebody to win. they have to instinctively have that gene as part of their makeup when they drive a race car for you. You can provide everything for them, but the ones that don't instinctively know how to win just make excuses about how they're going to be ready the next time. And Joseph Newgarden knows how to win. And he signed up with a team that knows how to win. And when you put that together, that's hard to beat.
The thing that I always found, even with the team that I work for, if the driver can win, the guys don't mind spending the hours to give him what he wants.
Right.
It's when you got a driver that you know if the other 32 dropped out, he still wouldn't win.
Right.
That it's tough to go to work.
Yeah, that's right.
I thank you for your time.
Hey,
Good
you're
luck
welcome.
in the 2018 season, and
You're
we'll
sure welcome.
keep an
Thank
eye on
you.
things what's going on.
Okay, thanks.
Mike Hull, Target Chip Ganassi Racing. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it very much. My next guest is here as he works his way up here. I will remind you that if you are a vintage car buff, you need to go to svra.com and subscribe to the Vintage Racing Quarterly. You'll find great cars and great drivers that are still on the road and the cars that are running. The SVRA has, in fact, it started a new series. It's going to be in the 20s and earlier cars, and they're also got an E-Sedan series that's starting. So they're not slowing down at anything. And I'll have, start next week, we'll talk about their schedule, what's coming up at svra.com, and get a hold of the Vintage Racing Quarterly. Got to remind you that Sam Pierce Chevrolet in Daleville, Indiana is the place to go for your cars and see why the best prices are, in fact, in the country at Sam Pierce Chevrolet. And while you're there, you'll find out why Sam is always rated at the top of customer satisfaction. Just take I-69 north to exit 34 and go south 1 mile, and you won't miss them. Sam Pierce Chevrolet. And if you want to get a feel what it's like, what these drivers feel in the car, take a ride in the Indy Racing Experience 2-seater. You can call to make a reservation. Go online to IndyRacingExperience.com, find a date that works for you, and sign it up and mention in the promo deal, tell them SJ1, and you will find that you'll get a 50% discount. Or you can call the office at 317-243-7171 and ask for Shonda. Is it time for new insurance for your car? Well, if it is, I have a suggestion for you. Go to VP Insurance in Speedway. They have great service. They take care of everything. And when you got a problem, Mike will take care of it. So call Mike Pardee at VP Insurance. They're located at 5004 West 16th Street in Speedway. His number is 317-248-0070. If you need car or home insurance or you got a commercial building, they can help you. 317-248-0070. You need anything embroidered? Well, then the place you got to go is Stitches 2 on Gasoline Alley. Call Fran. She'll do anything. Tell her what you got, how you can get it there, and she'll take care of it. Give her a call. 317-271-3444. I already did that one. And if you're looking for a summer party, you're going to have a party, a company get together, a cookout, you got to do what I think you need to do is call Toni Meyer. She'll be up here in a minute. She can help you arrange. She knows how to get the transportation, things to do, where to go, where to stay. She'll help you out. Give her a call. Her number is 317-515-7929. That's Toni Meyer. Give her a call. My next guest is a gentleman who has spent a number of years in the racing. He's an Indy 500 veteran. He has started a race team that's going to be kind of interesting to find out what they're doing. And as I mention almost every week, if you follow the series, you know that Jack is a dentist. And he has one of the finest dental programs going. He's got 5 offices and, I don't know, people everywhere doing a great job. But in the meantime, we're here to talk about racing. See what the new things going on with MV Motorsports. Please welcome Dr. Jack Miller. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We were in Houston over the weekend, and it was about as cold down there as it is here.
Yeah, I saw that. And they said that the cars ran good, the tires didn't do so good, though. It was a little too cold.
It was a little cold, but I think it was good for the drivers to get used to not having as much grip and dealing with the conditions. And we found our fuel mileage went way down, though, because the engines love the cold air, and it seems like they burned a lot more.
Well, the only thing when I saw that, I thought to myself, now these guys, when they go run in the summer, it's 100 degrees. They say, what happened to the air conditioning we had in Houston?
Yeah. I was wore out just standing there all day in the cold doing timing, and I can't imagine what the drivers went through. They were a little bit sore at the end of the day.
You've made some changes in your team this year. You're going to run 2 cars, you said.
Yes. Yeah,
And
we ran 3 to 4 last year, and it was just too much, and it was taking too much attention away on what our goal is. Our goal was to win a championship, win races, and do well. And I sat back, and I'm fortunate enough I don't have to do this for a living. There's some of the teams that have to have that many drivers for it to make sense. And we picked a driver that we've known for a long time out of Long Island. He's about a year and a half older than Jack, but he's about the same size. So we thought, setup wise, it would be really compatible, and they would work well together. And we've hired 2 new mechanics and a new engineer this year.
I hear the engineer you got's got a little bit of experience under his belt.
Yeah, his name's Tim Neff, and he was with Sam Schmidt for I think 12 years and won 7 Indy Light championships, and he's pulling double duty. He's still working at Bellardi, but he's I think we only have 1 conflict this year on the race weekends, and that's the Grand Prix at Indy, and we'll be in Atlanta, but. This was the first weekend that we worked together, and I cannot say enough good things about him, especially the way that he communicated with the drivers, very methodical in what he does. We're super happy to look forward to this season.
Now, you have a partner that I'm sure most people in-house have heard of, Adam Vinatieri. How involved is he with the team when he has the time?
I talked to him quite a bit. Talked to him again today. Trying to figure out. I know he's going to stay here in Indy next year. His contract was up this year, so they're negotiating. They're going to get their coach put in place first, and then the Colts won't let him go because he's 58 points away from scoring the most points ever in the NFL. So. His big concern is that he does it when he's here in Indy, so the fans can cheer. And my younger brother just bought a very nice jet, and Adam wants to start to learn how to fly. He's going to start taking flying lessons, so he can go to the more of the races and with us. And he said as soon as he's done playing, he'll attend all the races and he's been promoting our the series and our team quite a bit, and pretty soon when he's a Hall of Famer, the value even goes up more for him to go help find sponsorship.
Now, if you look on your website and you go to the bottom of it, you got a boatload of sponsors. You got a lot of people behind you. Now, obviously, they're not all $5 million at a time, but you have a good support system that allows you to do what you need to do so you can put the best product on the track.
Well, yeah, we have great sponsors, and I get asked all the time, how do you get these sponsors? And the biggest thing that you have to do is put yourself in that sponsor's position. Say, if I sponsor this car, would I sponsor this car, and am I going to get a return on it? And so far, knock on wood, I've never lost a sponsor. You set the expectations and then deliver more and make them happy, and they all want to be a part of it. They like the updates, and they want to see a kid that started racing at 3 go all the way through and race in the Indy 500 and all of them, I think that's their main goal also, to say, hey, I knew this kid when he was really small and, still racing go-karts and moving up the ladder, and it gives them something to do also.
I remember when you first came when the Indy Racing League started, you were at Indianapolis for the first time, and I said, why in the world? You're a dentist. What are you doing this? And how did you get into it? And you said, well, one of the things I thought in dental school, if I went into racing, I could get dental sponsorship, and you did. Crest, I mean, good grief, you still have that car hanging upside down in your office?
Well, I've told this story quite a few times. There are 5 kids in the family, a lot of love, not enough money to sponsor, or have my parents pay for karting or any type of racing, really. And even college, I didn't feel like it was their responsibility. So I worked very hard. I got to the point where I was so envious going to the 500, I didn't enjoy going because I wanted to race so bad. And then when I was working on my master's in pathology, and after college, and I was either going to go into medicine or dentistry, and I sat down one day and I watched television for 2 days in a row, and I wrote down every single commercial. And I don't have the numbers; they're close, but about 70% were healthcare. And a big percentage of that, 45%, were oral health care, toothbrushes, toothpaste, scope, Listerine. And I said, that's a consumable good right there. And I thought if I'm a dentist, I could represent that company. And so I applied to different medical schools and dental schools, and I kind of flipped a coin and said I'll have more of a chance getting a dental company to sponsor me. So that's the reason I went to dental school, and I wanted something to fall back on if my racing career didn't work out. And it worked out fine. The thing that people don't realize is, I'm known for Crest toothpaste, but Crest turned me down multiple times. And it took me 5 years to get my foot in the door with Procter & Gamble. I had Aquafresh toothpaste and Tilline water pick before that. But Crest, they have the golden children that they call it, the Tide, NyQuil, Pampers, and Crest. And each one of those brands by themselves are a Fortune 500 company. And this was about the time that Michael Jackson had some issues with Pepsi, and then Pepsi dropped them. And they were afraid to have one person represent one of their golden children. So, we put together a really good program for them, got to the right person, and the rest is history. They signed a 3-year deal. They paid me $1 million salary a year, and I got to keep prize money, and they bought Newell coaches and all the mobile dental clinics, and at the end, they gave all that to me. It was a great relationship with that company.
Amazing. When you were telling me that story some years back, boy, now there's a thinker. What is your goal? Where do you want to take your team? What's your ultimate goal? Now, your son, one of your drivers is your son Jack, who's been
Correct.
here, and people were impressed as all get out with him. What's your goal? Do you want to see your son in the Indy 500? Does his mother want to see him there?
Well, she's so used to it, and she knows that even though it's dangerous, we've taken the right steps. And I started racing at 26, did my first Indy 500 at 35. I realized, now what I didn't know then, type of thing. And I said, if I just don't want to keep throwing money at it. And Mike Hull said something. You have to want to win. You have to be a winner at all cost. And I have to admit that I didn't have that in me. I had a great time. I raced in the Indy 500 multiple times, and I had a lot of fun. But I was a little bit intimidated by the other drivers. And my son, when he was 7, at one of the series, he was so good that they said, well, you can race the open class. So he's racing with 25, 30-year-old guys, 18-year-old. And I said to him one day, I said, does it intimidate you racing with the older drivers? And, a 7-year-old innocent, he just kind of shook his head. He says, no, Dad, to me, they're all the enemy. It's just somebody I'm going to pass. I don't even think about who's driving that cart. All I know is I'm going to get around him. And he still has that attitude. And as a team owner, he's A+. As a dad, it scares the living daylights out of me sometimes, because if somebody leaves a whole gap that much, I know he's going to do it. I I haven't figured out if he's fearless or if he just doesn't know how dangerous it is. But I've seen him make some moves that I applaud as a fan, as a team owner, as a dad. I want to wring his neck when he passed a couple guys at the Coda Formula One race last year on the outside of turn 2. Very high-speed corner, and I saw him, and I knew he was going to do it because he said, "Dad, I think I can pick up a couple good spots in that position." I said, "Dad, there's a huge risk there," and he says, "Racing's a risk. I'm going for it," and he pulled it off. So, I see John over here. He knows what I'm talking about. It's hard for me sometimes to watch, but I'm very proud of him. And I feel like I've given him the opportunity to stop at any point. I've told him every month, if you ever want to quit racing, here's what we'll do. You tell me that day, then wait 2 weeks. Later, tell me again if you want to stop that day. I don't care if I just bought $1 million car. We're done. And because it's a sport you can't push somebody into. And I'm never going to do that. And this is his life, and this is all he wants to do.
If that were the case, would you shut down your operation, or would you run other drivers and continue on?
That's a tough question. When I stopped racing in 2001, everybody said you should be a team owner. You should be a team owner. And I didn't have the passion. The hard work that you have to do is it's a full time commitment, and I'd go to my house in Florida and go on my boat on race day because two reasons. I still wanted to race and be here and run, but also I didn't want my friends always trying to hit me up for tickets and stay at my house. So I tell them I was out of town. It's a good question. I don't know if like I said earlier, I'm not doing it for a living. I'm doing it to help my son get to his ultimate goal. And every kid that age would love to go race F1, and but he's a realist. He knows that that's probably not going to happen. But IndyCar is very, very achievable for him, and he doesn't even think about making the field. He's like, I'm going to go win the Indy 500 my rookie year, and then I'm going to go race F1 for a while. And I'm certainly not going to tell him that that's not going to happen. But it's up to him.
He'll probably find out how difficult it is to get into Formula One.
Yeah.
Would you put him? Are you looking to put him in the Mazda Road to Indy program in the USF 2000 and so forth?
Well, right now, that's another good question, and I'm going to say Pepsi Coke here. I've talked to Dan Anderson about his program. I really love the guys at Honda, and I like what they've put together. And they have an F3 program that they're doing F4 now. They're going to do an F3 program which will compete with the Mazda. The F2000 is very similar to the F4, and then the F3 will be like the Formula Mazda, and then they're going to do an F2 program which will be like the Indy Lights. And Honda's treated us so well that I feel some loyalty to them. And it would be nice for Jack to have his career go all the way up to Indy cars with Honda, but I'm not opposed to the other series. If we'll put him where the most competition is, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, and just so we're on the same page, I'm a Honda guy. I met Mr. Honda when I was in the military over in Japan.
Oh, nice.
And had a chance to talk with him a little bit, and as I've mentioned a number of times, he was a motorcycle guy. He loved motorcycles. Then he went into cars, and I went, ooh, this is expensive. So that's how Honda Motors got started to fund his racing programs. And you're right, the Honda guys are terrific. They're really something.
Well, and I had toyed around with running an Indy-only deal this year and talked to Art St. Cyr about getting an engine. And I think if we could have worked it out and got a Honda engine, we would have done an entry. But I think looking back on it, we need to concentrate on our F4 program. and move forward with that. There is something with the F4 program which a lot of the team owners complained about, and I took a completely different stance. It's a beginning series for somebody coming out of go-karting, and there's a lot of drivers that have driven the F2000 series, the Formula Mazda series, and there were a couple guys last year that had driven in Indy Lights and then coming back in the F4, and the other team owners are complaining, saying, "Oh, this is cheating. They shouldn't. It's like graduating from college and going back and playing 8th grade football." And I said, and they try to get a little coup together to try to stop some of these more experienced drivers. And I said, "Look, here's my attitude. I wish Lewis Hamilton, Vettel, Bottas, Sainz, all those guys would come over and race F4, because it's only going to make my son better racing against the fastest guys." So I don't get caught up in that whole battle, and I think that's probably the only negative part I can say about the series. And it's really not negative, but there's a whole plethora of different types of drivers and their backgrounds. And like Jack said, I don't care who it is. It's just another car. Bring them on.
Are you happy with what SCCA is doing with the groups you're in?
They're getting better. They're trying very hard. They've had 3 or 4 different presidents in the last 2 years. They're getting better organized. This year, I think it's going to be a huge improvement. I think they're getting out of the club level mentality and more of the pro racing mentality. And with any series, you can look at the positive or negative, but I think they're doing the best job. I think that that they care about doing a good job, and they're realizing that we're not only customers, but we're members of the SCCA.
If your son Jack were to say and work his way up to get to Indianapolis, would you start a team? Would you want to own the team so you control how it works? Because you've been there, you've driven for other people. Would you want to own the team?
There's going to be a point where that's a tough question. There's going to be a point where he's, I'm not going to feed him his entire life through this program. But he's going to have to know that the financial support, is going to be kind of pulled out from underneath him, and he's going to have to do what he has to do. And and we've talked about it. I really enjoy owning a team, but if he had an opportunity to go with another good team, I wouldn't be hurt. My feelings wouldn't be hurt, and it's still a little bit too early to figure that out. Roger Penske calls him. He has them, Michael calls him, but we, I just want to make sure that he has the best opportunity. I'd see this in go-karts a lot of times. Parents would spend outrageous amounts of money on engines, and I call them drag racer passers, and they could come out of the corner and just beat somebody down the straightaway, and the numbers were getting crazy. They were leasing engines for $7,500, $10,000 a weekend for karting, and I would tell these dads, you are handicapping your son, by doing that, or son or daughter, and you need to have them figure out how to pass. Just winning every race because they can pass somebody down the straightaway is going to hurt them, and I've seen this. I've seen some of the drivers in the last couple of years that came up from karting in the F4 where all the engines are equal. Now they're struggling, and they get frustrated. Some of them have left. Some of them have given up. Some of them are still there. But it's quite interesting watching the psychology of it.
The thing that impresses me, among other things about you, is when you get into something, you don't fiddle around. You don't just, let's try this. You go into it. And I'm thinking of your business. She is one of your patients sitting over there. I want to introduce you to her. And I've mentioned this almost every week. You know, one of the least popular doctor's appointment is a dentist, usually. You go, oh, geez. But you have built an enormous business. In fact, didn't you just open your 5th office, I think you told me?
Yes.
And it's doing rather well.
Well, my mom always taught us, if you're going to be a ditch digger, be the best ditch digger out there. And if you're going to do something, do it start to finish, or don't do it at all, or don't even start it, and be committed to it. And, you know, I love my parents. They're both still alive, and I talk to them every day and still get a lot of words of wisdom from them. And I'm very fortunate that they spent the time with the 5 children and taught us, you know, some values of hard work. And, you know, I enjoy working. Everybody says, when are you going to retire? And I just don't want to, because every day's a different day for me. And we, you know, with this 5th office, we opened it up, and we're already booked. I mean, and it's been open for going on the 3rd week now. And it's in front of Westfield school system, right on 31 and 32, and it's 14,500 square feet. And, you know, I came home, and I told my wife, I said, hey, I just bought a building today. And she said, what for? And I said, because we're putting another dental office in there. And then my sister about had a heart attack because she runs the 5 offices. But once you have a business plan in place, it's very easy to keep repeating it. And Steve Hughes, which owns St. Elmo's and Harry and Izzy's, and he owned 36 Arby's. About 10 years ago, I said, hey, Steve, will you sell me a couple of the Arby's? And he says, no, I like you too much. And I said, why? And he goes, what do you think an average Arby nets a year? And I said, I don't know. He goes, about 125,000, but you're going to work 120 hours a week to do that. But he says, but when you have 36 of them, that's when you really start to make the good money. So I use that argument to my wife. And, you know, the more racing we do, the more expensive it gets.
How many dentists do you have working for you?
Well, there's 9 of us right now. So,
but you've got a staff of, what, 40 people or something? You told me something
we're
like
at
that.
49, and thank you, Mr. Obama. We'd like to go over 50, but we need about 15 more employees. But once you hit that 50 mark, it puts you into a whole nother realm of benefits, everything else. And we sat back and looked at them. We're eventually going to have to do it because we're growing so much.
Well, the only thing I can say is, from my observation, watching what you do and keep up with it, they must have had a business class when you're going through dental school, because you've certainly done a phenomenal job. And I'm telling you, when I pick her up, she's thrilled. The dentists are good, the people are good, the hygienists are good, the technicians are good. And I walk in the office and they think I was their best friend, and they don't know me from a barrel of apples.
That's good to hear, because there's not a lot of customer service out there anymore. And I'm very adamant that everybody that comes through that door gets treated like my mom and dad. And I think that's the number one reason we are successful. And, you know, we do exactly what needs to be done. We modify treatment plans. If somebody brings their 85-year-old parent in there and they need some work done, we'll help do some patchwork. You know, we always do the dentistry first and then the money second. We never look at it the opposite way. And there's a lot of corporations out there that put their dentist on a quota that they have to meet each month, and we've never done that, and we never will. I don't know how you could ever do that in healthcare. So we've been really fortunate, knock on wood. We've never been sued, and you know, we take pride in what we do, and you know, I enjoy what I do.
How many days a week do you spend in the office?
I'm there a whole half day a week. You know, that's
Is that all at once, the half a day, or do you split it up?
Wednesday afternoon is my vacation because I've never done general dentistry. I've only done the surgeries for all the years. So all the offices refer the surgical patients to me on Wednesday afternoon, and I get to shut my phone off, and I get to concentrate on what I'm doing, and I'll brag. I'm very good at what I do, and it takes you 8 to 10 years to get fairly good at what you do, and I've been doing it 25, and about year 18, 19, I got bored, and I started looking for the difficult cases to come in. So I don't want every single one to be a very difficult case, but it's kind of nice for me to have a little bit of challenge if we do a resection or bone graft or an implant or impacted thirds or move bone around. It's just something that it keeps my skills up.
And you've taken that ability with your business and everything else and taken it to your racing, because I watched your team operate, and there's not a lot of hokey pokey go on. You're there for a reason. You're there to perform, and you're there to win.
Absolutely. No cell phones. Jack's not out hanging around with the other drivers, playing around. We're there to race. And I told him, if you want to, go hang out with your friends, and you can do it off time. I mean, I do have some pretty strict rules on. But I don't have to do that anymore because he's loaded every time he goes to a race, and it's kind of like that dog on the chain, and it's choking itself to get going. You unhook the chain, and so he's getting on more automatic mode. He's maturing more. He's understanding. Tim Neff was working with him this weekend trying to explain Castor and Ackerman, preload on the springs and things that he kind of has a general overview of, but he's going to take a big class from Tim, and I think that'll really help him.
Well, I'll tell you what, I keep up with what you're doing and enjoy watching you. I want to see your son progress, as of course you do, and we look forward to talking to you again down in the season, see how you're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for having me on, and I always enjoy coming down here. Keep
an eye out. MV Motorsports. There's a young man driving for him, Jack Miller. Not the same one. This one's a little younger version. Yeah. He's going to be there, and hopefully one of these days they'll announce it. And starting in the front row is Jack Miller. You never know.
Well, before I leave, I have to tell you quick. So we were in Houston, and they let us take the rental cars out in the morning, and he was driving one of the other rental cars, and he did something to me about 4 years ago. We were at Newcastle, and I was in a pretty fast go-kart, and the first time I'd ever gone on track with him in practice. And I was coming down the straightaway, and I turned and I looked, and I laughed to myself. I said, he must have spun off trying to get around me. And we went into turn 17, 70 plus miles an hour, and I get in the corner, and bam, he hits me, and I go flying off the track, and he gave me the finger. And I mustn't have not turned my head enough to see that he was right on me. So on Saturday morning when we went out, he was in one of the rental cars. And if you don't know my son, he's very small for his age. He's probably that much shorter than anybody in his class. So he has a seat all the way up and sitting like this, and I jumped in one of the other rental cars, and I said, I'm going to go take him out. And the dad of the other driver was riding with me, and it was his rental car, and I couldn't catch Jack because he was in a faster car. And then finally I said, I'm just going to do a bonsai move on him, and I went up underneath him and gave him a little shove in the corner. And I look back, and he's doing this to me. And then Phil Tavella was in the car, and he's like, we should probably get off the track right now. And I said, no, we are getting off the track right now because I know what's coming back to me. But it was he's begged me a bunch of times to get in the F4 car because we have 3 cars and go out and race him, and he would beat me bad, which it's hard to admit, but I don't want to battle him. That's for sure.
Good for you. I wish you best. Thanks for coming. I think we'll be in your office here 3 or 4 weeks, whatever it is. I don't remember when she's going, but you're doing a great job. I enjoy talking to you. I appreciate you taking the time and coming down on a cold night.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for
forward to-
asking me.
Look forward to hearing sometime in the middle of the season how you're doing, that you're leading the championship.
Well, I hope we do well this year. Last year he had a race won, and he made a tiny mistake at the start. We do standing starts, and he started 4th out of 34, and he moved about that far, but he caught himself. The red lights went off, and they went, and within 2 laps he was just checking. He was in the lead and checking out on 2nd place, and then about 3 laps later, we got the car number 40 has to do a drive-through, which was and that was his first race weekend, and he was still only 13 at the time, so it would have been pretty neat.
Well, good luck this season. We'll keep up with you, and hopefully you'll come back again.
All right, thank you very much.
Jack
Thank you,
Miller,
everybody.
MV Motorsports. Hey, Jack. I want you to say hello to Sharon. I want you to meet her. She wants to meet you. Okay. My next guest will be coming up here, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, there is this weekend, Friday and Saturday, the 19th and 20th, a more horsepower racing collectible show with over 30 vendors. If you get a chance, you want to stop by at the Waterfront Hotel. It used to be the Clarion. It's just west of Speedway off Crawfordsville Road, just north of Crawfordsville Road, the 19th and 20th. The admission is only $5. Kids under 12 are free. And the ticket you buy on Friday is good for Saturday. And the young lady who is a co-promoter of this thing and also part owner of the Three Sisters in a Trunk, please welcome. You're not going to get mad at me, are you?
Oh, absolutely not.
Please welcome Toni Meyer.
Thank you, Don.
How you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me on and talk a little bit about pre-2018 racing season. Our little show this weekend will kind of kick off what proves to be another great year of racing here in our Hoosier state.
Now, you are with Marie Hall. I guess you're a co-owner of Three Sisters in a Trunk. And the trunk sits outside. That ain't a good deal. I don't get that one. Did you have a good holiday season down there?
We did. We
Did you?
did. Happy New Year.
And thank you. Same to
one
you.
and all.
And there's a guy sitting here at the end of this table who's his honey bought a book from down there, and he's been telling me how great it is. Good thing it has a lot of pictures in it because he doesn't read real good, but he does look at pictures, and he does recognize them.
Well, we are a unique store on Main Street in Speedway. We have all new ladies' clothes, accessories, that kind of thing. But we also have something for the men as well, and that's 2 rooms of racing memorabilia.
Really?
So we have a room up front with a lot of interesting books, and then in the back we have another room that's a very unique collection of racing memorabilia.
And I read where the paraphernalia or the attire comes from California. Now most places they go to New York to buy, but is there any reason that you buy from California other than Marie's daughter lives there?
Well, Marie was from California.
I know that.
And had a long, history there in California. And when she had her store at 16th and Lyndhurst, she would shop in California. So she kind of knows the area and knows the ins and outs of LA versus New York City. So
I see.
we have good luck out there.
So what prompted this collectible show? What was the idea? When did you get this idea?
So about 3 years ago, we came up with the idea to look into having a racing memorabilia show in January, similar to what used to be at the old, I still call it the Speedway Motel, but the old Brickyard Crossing there. I think that was a traditional show that went on for years, and then when it ended, kind of had a void in the racing season, and we thought, well, what a great idea to see if we could bring back a January show, and it worked out that we were able to have it at the Waterfront Hotel, and it took off the first year, second year, now we're in our third year, and we have over 30 vendors and over 60 tables this year. So, and we have been able to add in the past 2 years a Race Chaser luncheon. And this year on Saturday at noon, it's a sold-out event, and it will be Bob Jenkins interviewing two-time Indy 500 champion Al Unser Jr. So that's a nice addition. So we feel like it's a kind of an entire package for the race fan, and kind of a way to mingle with people until we get together in March for St. Pete.
Now, you got to explain something to me. The guy with the dirty goggles, John, is in Arizona. How can this thing possibly function without him?
Well, you know, he's
Probably very well.
he's created a committee,
Oh,
so
boy.
we are working with some of his fellow gogglers, I guess, if you will, and they're helping put on the show. So
Well, I understand one of the tables will be occupied by this lovely blonde over here and her fearless leader, Betsy Smith. And I might mention, if you haven't been to see the latest exhibit at the Speedway Museum, you got to go over and see it. The engines of Indy and the pace cars, and then they have what they call a petting zoo. I had an idea for that, but they said no. We got parts and pieces on the table. That's what you pet. I was trying to get Fluffy over there to pet, but that didn't work out. Bill wouldn't let her go. You said you've got an excess of 30 vendors. When I last asked, I said, how many extra? And you had 33 or 34. Have you gotten any more since then?
no, we've been sold out since Thanksgiving as
Oh,
far
you're sold
as
out. Oh.
vendors go. But yeah, we're thrilled. The IMS Museum, they're back for a third year in a row. Some other notable names in racing collectibles, Ted Knorr will be there. Mr. Mahoney will be there. He's the famed photographer who is kind of starting to liquidate, if you will, his photography. So he'll be there selling tons of his photos. And we also have new vendors. We have 2 from Ohio this year, returning vendors from Missouri, and also a new vendor from Illinois. So we're excited that we've kind of rotated some vendors, and some of the staples are back, but we also have some new inventory for our attendees to take a look at.
Well, I certainly encourage everybody to come out. It's easily accessible. You just go take Crawfordsville Road, go west, and if there's a light underneath 465, and the next light, there's a BP station, turn right, and the hotel's right there. You can't miss it. Did you make arrangements for those maybe coming from out of town to spend the night there?
There are still rooms available at the Waterfront Hotel at a special rate of $84 a night. So you can contact the hotel directly if you're interested in an overnight room.
If somebody needs to get more information about something, I think it's available. They can call you.
You can call myself or Marie, or you can email us at mhpspeedway@aol.com. And we will promptly answer any questions you might have.
Don't believe that. I call. She doesn't call me back.
Oh,
But then
I've learned better. I return all of Don Kay's phone calls.
Yeah. Actually, what happens is it's him. Oh, never mind. Now it's only $5 admission, and that's good for both days. So that's $250 a day. That's pretty reasonable.
That is correct. Our hours will open on Friday, this coming Friday, from 5 to 8 p.m. And then on Saturday, the show will run from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
So at 4:05, if I'm there, you're going to point me to the door.
Well, I would not do that, no.
Well, I tell you what, I was there I've been there all 3 years actually, and it's an interesting show. There's a lot of good people, and if nothing else, you can sit and talk to them, and they'll be glad to chew the rag about memorabilia and the days gone by.
It's a great opportunity at a $5 cost to spend some time with your fellow bench racers and kick off the 2018 racing season.
I bet I can convince somebody that I won the 500, as long as they don't know who I am. I thank you for your time. I wish you nothing but the best. I have sent out on Facebook, and I'll send out another notice. Remind everybody, you get a chance, take a ride out there Friday and Saturday. It's open. Be there.
Thank you, Don. We appreciate the opportunity to let people know about our show, and I do have some additional flyers here tonight if anybody would like one to have for their personal use or post in their business. We do appreciate spreading the word.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you got to come just to come and talk to Toni. That's worth the trip right in and of itself, right?
That's exactly
I
right.
knew
And
it.
one last plug, we do have our Three Sisters in a Trunk new T-shirt for this year. Hashtag is it May yet? Those will be available for sale in both women's and men's at only $24. So
Oh,
got to come for that right there.
will I look good in it?
You will.
Oh, boy. All right. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Toni
Don.
Meyer, if you get a chance, get out and see the show. And I want to remind you, next Tuesday, 1 week from tonight, my first scheduled guest is the CEO of Hellman and Company, Mr. Mark Miles. So hope to see you then. I got a lot of questions for him. Until next week, this is Don Kay saying thanks for being here, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Till next week, good night.